I'm Natalie Davidson, 37, and until 6 months ago, I had what most would call a picture-perfect life in suburban Minneapolis with my husband Andrew, 40, and our teenage daughter Lily, 14. As a nurse working long shifts at Mercy Hospital, I was beyond grateful when Andrew offered to cook dinner that Friday night. How could I know that one bite would leave Lily and me collapsed on our dining room floor, unable to move yet fully conscious to hear the chilling words he whispered? "Don't worry. You're not going to die. I need you both alive for this." Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever ignored your intuition when it was screaming at you that something wasn't right. Andrew and I met during my final year of nursing school. He was a charismatic pharmaceutical sales representative who swept me off my feet with his intelligence and ambition. Within 18 months, we were married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family, who celebrated what everyone believed would be a lifetime of happiness. The early years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped for. Andrew's career was taking off, and we purchased our dream home in a quiet suburb with excellent schools and friendly neighbors. When Lily was born 2 years later, Andrew was the perfect father, doting, patient, and completely in love with our little girl. He'd rush home from work to spend time with her, documenting her first steps, first words, and every milestone with the enthusiasm only a devoted father could show. I returned to nursing part-time when Lily turned 3, gradually increasing my hours as she grew more independent. By the time she entered middle school, I had advanced to charge nurse in the emergency department, a position that came with more responsibility but also more satisfaction. Andrew seemed supportive of my career progression, often boasting to his colleagues about having a wife who saved lives for a living. But looking back now, I can pinpoint when things began to change. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I dismissed the warning signs as temporary stress or midlife restlessness. About 2 years ago, Andrew began pulling away emotionally. Our conversations grew shorter, less intimate. He started working later hours, claiming new product launches and territory expansions required more of his time. "It's just for a few months," he'd assure me when I expressed concern. "Once we get through this quarter, things will calm down." But they never did. Instead, the distance between us grew. Andrew became increasingly secretive with his phone, changing passwords and walking into another room to take calls. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became vague, dismissive. "Nothing interesting. Just work stuff you wouldn't understand," became his standard response. Meanwhile, my own workload at the hospital intensified as the healthcare system struggled with staffing shortages. 12-hour shifts often stretched to 14, and I'd come home exhausted, barely able to stay awake through dinner. Lily, now navigating the complicated social landscape of early high school, needed emotional support I struggled to provide in my depleted state. Our family dinners, once a sacred daily ritual, became rare occurrences. The financial dynamics of our household shifted as well. Though I never had complete visibility into our finances, Andrew had always managed that aspect of our lives. I noticed he had become increasingly controlling about expenses. My requests for new household items were met with interrogations about necessity. Meanwhile, packages would arrive for him that he'd quickly whisk away to the basement where he'd set up what he called his home office. "It's just equipment for work," he'd say dismissively when I asked. "Nothing interesting." Even more concerning was Lily's changing relationship with her father. Once inseparable, she began avoiding one-on-one time with Andrew. When I asked her about it during one of our rare mother-daughter shopping trips, she shrugged non-committally. "Dad's just different now," she said, examining a display of nail polish with forced concentration. "He asks weird questions about my friends, especially about Sarah and what her parents do. And he gets mad when I don't want to tell him stuff." I should have pursued this further, but between hospital emergencies and household management, I filed it away as typical teenage parent friction. Another mistake in a growing list of oversights. 3 months before the dinner incident, I discovered strange receipts in Andrew's jacket pocket while doing laundry. They listed chemicals I recognized from my medical training, nothing illegal, but unusual for someone without a background in chemistry or medicine. When I casually mentioned finding them, Andrew snatched them from my hand. "Those are just for a work project," he snapped. Why are you going through my pockets? I wasn't snooping, Andrew. I was doing laundry, I replied, taken aback by his reaction. But what does your pharmaceutical sales job have to do with potassium ferrocyanide and sodium thiosulfate? His face had darkened. It's a special demonstration for doctors. You wouldn't understand the marketing angle. That night, we had our biggest argument in 15 years of marriage. Andrew accused me of not trusting him, of undermining his career with paranoid questions. I countered with concerns about his secretiveness, the late nights, the unexplained expenses, his meticulous note-taking after family meals. The day before the infamous dinner, I discovered a hidden journal in his car while looking for a phone charger. I only glimpsed a few pages, but what I saw disturbed me deeply. Detailed observations about Lily's and my sleeping patterns, notations about our meal reactions, and chemical formulas I didn't fully understand. Before I could investigate further, I heard Andrew returning and hastily returned the journal to its hiding place. That night, I lay awake, staring at my husband's back, wondering who this stranger in my bed really was, and what he might be capable of. I decided to confront him the following weekend, after gathering more evidence and ensuring Lily could stay with my sister. Little did I know that Andrew had already set his own plan in motion. The morning of the incident began oddly, with unexpected cheerfulness from Andrew. When I stumbled into the kitchen at 5:30 a.m. to prepare for my early shift, he was already there, brewing coffee and humming to himself. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, sliding a mug across the counter to me with a smile I hadn't seen in months. I was thinking, why don't I cook dinner tonight? Something special for my two favorite women. I nearly dropped the mug in surprise. Andrew hadn't voluntarily cooked a meal in over a year. His culinary efforts had once been a monthly tradition, but like many aspects of our marriage, they had faded into memory. "That sounds nice," I replied cautiously, studying his face for clues to this sudden change. "Any special occasion I've forgotten? Does a man need an occasion to do something nice for his family?" Andrew approached, placing his hands on my shoulders. His touch, once so familiar and comforting, now sent an involuntary chill down my spine. "I know things have been tense lately. I thought we could use a nice family evening. I'll be home around 6, I said, still wary but allowing a small flicker of hope to ignite. Perhaps this was an olive branch, a first step toward repairing what had broken between us. Perfect. His smile broadened. "I'll pick up Lily from her study group and have everything ready by 6:30. As I drove to the hospital, my mind raced with possibilities. Could Andrew be feeling remorseful about his recent behavior? Was this dinner a prelude to a meaningful conversation about our marriage? Or was it something else entirely? The receipts, the strange hours in the basement, the secret journal. None of these aligned with a simple desire to reconnect over a home-cooked meal. My shift at Mercy Hospital that day was particularly grueling. A multi-vehicle accident on the interstate brought a wave of trauma cases that kept the entire emergency department in constant motion. Between stabilizing patients and coordinating with surgical teams, I barely had time to drink water, let alone contemplate my marriage. During a rare quiet moment around 2 p.m., I found myself in the break room with Jessica Moore, a fellow nurse and one of the few people I'd confided in about my concerns. "So Andrew's cooking dinner tonight?" Jessica said. Jessica set down her lunch, her expression serious. "Nat, remember what I told you about my ex? How right before I found out about his gambling addiction, he suddenly became the perfect husband. Flowers, dinners, gifts for the kids." I nodded reluctantly. Jessica had shared her painful divorce story during many late-night shifts. "It was his way of managing my suspicion," she continued. "He's taking pictures of everything he's buying and making notes. Coming home at 6. Love you," I replied, trying to quell the uneasiness rising in my chest. For the remainder of my shift, I was distracted, making a medication error that, thankfully, was caught by a pharmacist before reaching the patient. Dr. Winters, the department head, noticed my unusual lack of focus. "Davidson, you all right? You seem off today." "Just tired," I lied. "And thinking about home stuff." He nodded sympathetically. "Family always comes first. If you need to cut out early, we can cover." I considered it momentarily but decided against it. Whatever was happening at home, running toward it earlier wouldn't necessarily help. Besides, a small, cowardly part of me wanted to delay whatever confrontation might be waiting. As I clocked out at 5:45 p.m., I tried to reframe my thinking. Maybe this dinner really was Andrew's attempt at reconciliation. Maybe I'd been overreacting to normal midlife stress behaviors. Maybe tonight would be the beginning of honest communication and healing. The drive home felt interminable. Each red light an opportunity for doubt to creep back in. Each green a push toward a future I couldn't predict. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I sat for a moment, gathering my courage. Our house looked exactly as it always did. A handsome two-story colonial with well-maintained landscaping and warm lights glowing from within. Nothing outwardly suggested the emotional turmoil inside its walls. Yet as I approached the front door, unusual aromas wafted through. Exotic spices I couldn't identify, overlaid with something faintly medicinal. When I entered, Andrew was standing in the kitchen doorway wearing an apron and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Perfect timing," he said, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Dinner's almost ready." Behind him, I could see our dining room table set with our best china and crystal glasses, items typically reserved for holidays or special guests. A bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, a brand I didn't recognize, stood open in the center. "Wow," I managed, shrugging off my coat. "This looks elaborate." "Nothing but the best for my girls," Andrew replied, his voice carrying an enthusiasm that sounded rehearsed. "Lily's upstairs changing. Why don't you freshen up and join us in 10 minutes? I've prepared something very special." As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, the sense of wrongness intensified. Nothing overtly threatening had occurred, yet every interaction felt scripted, performative. I quickly changed out of my scrubs into jeans and a sweater, then washed the hospital scent from my hands and face. Before heading back downstairs, I knocked on Lily's door. "Come in," she called. Lily glanced toward her open door before answering. "He's being super weird, Mom. Like fake nice? And he wouldn't let me see what he was cooking. Said it's some special recipe he's been perfecting." A chill ran through me. "Did you have any of it yet?" "No. He said we all had to try it together." She lowered her voice further. "Mom, I saw him put something from a little vial into the sauce. When I asked what it was, he said it was a special flavor enhancer from work." Before I could respond, Andrew's voice called up from the bottom of the stairs. "Ladies, dinner is served." Lily and I exchanged a look loaded with uncertainty. In that moment, I should have trusted my instincts, gathered my daughter and left the house. Instead, I squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's probably nothing," I whispered, trying to convince myself as much as her. "But if anything seems off about the food, don't eat it. Say you're not feeling well." As we descended the stairs, Andrew stood watching us with an unervingly focused gaze. "I've prepared something truly unforgettable tonight," Andrew announced, pulling out our chairs with flourish. "A dining experience you'll never forget." The main course sat in the center of our dining table. An elaborate dish I didn't recognize, aromatic and artfully presented on our best serving platter. Steam rose from what appeared to be some kind of braised meat in a rich, dark sauce, surrounded by roasted vegetables and a grain that might have been quinoa or couscous. "What is this?" asked, trying to keep my voice casual as Andrew served generous portions onto our plates. "It looks exotic." "My own creation," Andrew replied, his eyes never leaving the food as he carefully arranged each plate. "Inspired by several international cuisines. The sauce is the real star, took me weeks to get it right." Lily glanced at me nervously as her plate was set before her. The food did look and smell delicious, which somehow made the situation more unsettling. Andrew remained standing, watching us expectantly instead of serving himself. "Go ahead, try it while it's hot. I want to see your reactions to the first bite." "Aren't you having any?" asked, noticing a slight tremor in my hand. The basement experiments, the strange receipts, Lily's observation about the vial, all of it screamed danger. Yet here we sat. Social conventions and years of trust warring with newly awakened suspicion. "Mom," Lily whispered, barely audibly. Andrew's expression hardened slightly. "Is something wrong?" After all the work I put into this meal. No, nothing's wrong, I said, forcing a smile. It's just been a long day at the hospital. Let's eat together as a family. You sit down too, Andrew. For a moment, tension crackled between us. Then Andrew's face relaxed into that same unnerving smile. Of course. Family dinner it is. He served himself a small portion and sat down, lifting his wine glass. To family. Reluctantly, Lily and I raised our water glasses. I noticed Andrew didn't actually drink his wine, merely bringing it to his lips. Try it, he urged again. The flavor was complex, rich with unfamiliar spices, but underneath lay a faintly bitter, chemical undertone. Beside me, Lily followed my lead, taking an even smaller taste. Andrew's focus was absolute, cataloging our every reaction. Delicious, I lied, fighting the instinct to spit it out. Very unique. Within seconds, I felt it, a tingling sensation spreading across my tongue and lips, followed by an alarming numbness. My medical training instantly recognized the signs of a neurological agent at work. Beside me, Lily's eyes widened in panic. Mom, she slurred, her speech already affected. I feel weird. I tried to stand but found my limbs unresponsive, heavy as stone. The room began to tilt and swim before my eyes. I reached desperately for my phone in my pocket, fingers fumbling clumsily against the fabric. What's happening? I managed to ask, though the words came out garbled and thick. Andrew remained seated, watching us with detached fascination. Fascinating how quickly it's taking effect. The absorption rate through the oral mucosa is even faster than I calculated. I struggled to keep my head up as the paralysis spread rapidly through my body. Beside me, Lily slumped in her chair, then slid to the floor with a thud that seemed distant despite being just feet away. My last coordinated movement was an attempt to reach for her. Instead, I felt myself pitching forward, my face hitting the edge of the table before I joined my daughter on the dining room floor. The paralysis was now complete from the neck down, but horrifyingly, my consciousness remained intact. I could see, hear, and understand everything, trapped in an unresponsive body. From my position on the floor, I watched Andrew's shoes as he calmly stood and walked around the table. He knelt beside me, turning my head so I was forced to look into his eyes. The loving husband I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a clinical observer studying a specimen. Don't worry. You're not going to die, he whispered, his voice eerily calm. I need you both alive for this. The compound I've developed is quite remarkable. Complete temporary paralysis without affecting consciousness or vital functions. The medical applications are enormous. He stroked my hair almost tenderly, his touch revolting against my immobile skin. You'll be fully conscious for the entire experience. That's the beauty of it. No permanent damage. Just complete helplessness for approximately 4 to 6 hours. From somewhere beyond my field of vision, I heard Lily making small, distressed sounds, the only movement her body would allow. Next time, the words sent fresh horror through my paralyzed form. Andrew moved efficiently around the kitchen, retrieving a notebook and camera from a drawer. He began documenting our conditions methodically, taking close-up photographs of our eyes, checking our pulses, making detailed notes. Subject A shows full neuromuscular blockade at 3 minutes post-ingestion. He dictated into a small recorder. Pupillary response normal, indicating no effect on autonomic functions. Respiratory rate slightly depressed, but within acceptable parameters. As he worked, the horrifying truth crystallized in my immobile mind. This wasn't the first time. The unexplained illnesses Lily and I had experienced over the past months, the mysterious stomach bugs, the periods of unexplained fatigue. Andrew hadn't mentioned being sidelined at work. As far as I knew, he was still employed, still bringing home his regular salary. The beauty of this compound, he continued, is its untraceability. It metabolizes completely within hours, leaving no evidence in blood or tissue samples. Do you understand what that means, Natalie? It's the perfect chemical restraint. Military applications. Beneath the paralysis, I felt a faint tingling in my extremities. Either the drug was beginning to wear off slightly, or my desperate adrenaline was fighting through its effects. Andrew positioned the needle against Lily's arm, his movements precise and practiced. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that the man I had married, the father of my child, was gone if he had ever truly existed at all. As Andrew prepared to inject Lily, he seemed compelled to continue his monologue, perhaps enjoying having captive listeners for his twisted revelation. "You know, Natalie, you never really asked about my work," he said, setting the syringe down momentarily on the coffee table he'd pulled closer. "All these years. That suited me perfectly. While you were building your precious nursing career, I was developing something revolutionary. Through my paralysis, I managed to blink rapidly, the only movement I could control. My mind raced, cataloging everything he said, searching for any information that might help us when I found a way out of this nightmare. I didn't start out intending to experiment on my family," Andrew continued, his tone almost apologetic, flipping through pages of meticulous notes. "It began small, microdoses in your morning coffee, Natalie. Just enough to observe mild effects. That day last March when you felt dizzy at work? That was the first successful trial." My memory flashed to that incident, how I'd attributed it to skipping breakfast, even as my nursing instincts suggested something more concerning. I'd brushed it aside, trusting that my home was safe, that my husband was safe. Lily was actually more sensitive to the compounds, Andrew noted clinically. Her smaller body mass required significant dosage adjustments. Remember that stomach flu that kept her home from school for 3 days in April? That was an early miscalculation on my part. From my position on the floor, I could just see Lily's face. Silent tears streamed from her terrified eyes. The knowledge that her father had been poisoning her deliberately, using her as a laboratory rat, reflected in her expression with devastating clarity. Andrew stood and paced the room, warming to his subject like a professor giving a lecture. "The breakthrough came 2 months ago. I finally isolated the specific neurotoxin component that creates paralysis without affecting consciousness or core organ function. Do you have any idea how valuable that is? Surgical patients could remain completely still without the risks of anesthesia. Military applications alone could be worth billions." He knelt between us again, his expression animated with a passion I'd never seen during our marriage. "Tonight's formula is my most refined version. The paralysis should last approximately 4 hours, followed by a gradual return of motor function. No permanent damage, that's the beauty of it." Andrew checked his watch, making another note. "It's been 43 minutes since ingestion. Any sensation returning yet?" Blink once for yes. Neither Lily nor I responded, though I had begun to feel faint tingling in my fingertips. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing his timeline predictions were accurate. Undeterred by our lack of response, Andrew retrieved his phone and made a call. "It's me. Phase 3 testing is proceeding as expected. Both subjects showing textbook responses." He paused, listening. "No complete paralysis but fully conscious. Yes, that's the unique selling point. I'll have comprehensive data sets by morning." The revelation that Andrew had a partner in this horrific experiment sent fresh terror through me. This wasn't just my husband's psychotic break. It was a calculated operation with outside involvement. After ending the call, Andrew returned to his documentation, photographing our pupils, checking vital signs, making detailed notes. "You should be proud, Natalie," he said absently. "Your medical contributions typically help one patient at a time. Through this work, our work, really, we could revolutionize chemical restraint methods globally." He seemed genuinely unable to comprehend the monstrosity of his actions, recasting himself as a misunderstood pioneer rather than what he truly was, an abuser who had violated every principle of consent and medical ethics, with his pedestrian research on cholesterol medications. Meanwhile, my work on targeted neurological compounds was deemed ethically concerning. This was news to me. Andrew had never mentioned being passed over for promotion. In fact, he'd celebrated his colleague David Jeffrey's advancement with apparent sincerity, even attending his promotion dinner. "That's when I realized I would need to conduct my research independently," Andrew continued. "The basement conversion wasn't just for a home office. It's a fully functional lab now. Quite impressive, really, what one can accomplish with determination and the right equipment." He smiled at me with something like his old affection. The irony is that your career actually facilitated mine. Your hospital shifts gave me uninterrupted research time. Your medical knowledge helped me refine my approach. Even your nursing books provided valuable references for human physiology parameters. As he spoke, I felt growing sensation in my extremities, pinpricks of feeling returning to my fingers and toes. The paralytic agent was beginning to wear off, slightly ahead of Andrew's predicted timeline. I kept my expression frozen, not wanting to alert him to this development. Tonight's test is particularly important, Andrew said, retrieving the syringe again. This catalyst should accelerate the secondary phase effects in Subject B, that's Lily, while Subject A, dear wife, serves as the control. The comparison data will be invaluable. As he approached Lily with the syringe, I noticed tears streaming from her eyes, the only movement her paralyzed body allowed. Her terror was palpable, a living thing in the room with us. Don't worry, sweetheart, Andrew said to her in a mockery of paternal comfort. This won't hurt. And imagine being part of something truly revolutionary. Your contribution to science will be significant, even if anonymously documented. He swabbed her arm with an alcohol wipe, the mundane medical procedure horrifyingly incongruous with the situation. As he positioned the needle, I concentrated every ounce of my returning neural function on moving my hand, just an inch, just enough to create a distraction. You should both understand something, Andrew continued, still holding the syringe poised above Lily's arm. This isn't just about scientific advancement or professional vindication, though those are significant motivators. It's about securing our financial future. He smiled, looking between us as if expecting gratitude. I've already secured interest from private military contractors. They understand the value of this work without the bureaucratic hand-wringing of traditional pharmaceutical channels. One successful demonstration. It was the final, devastating revelation. Andrew truly believed he was acting for our benefit, unable to see the moral perversion of his methods. As he finally pressed the needle to Lily's skin. Interesting, he murmured, setting the syringe down and coming to examine me more closely. Motor function returning already? That's at least an hour ahead of projected timeline. He grabbed my wrist, checking my pulse. Elevated heart rate too. The adrenaline response must be accelerating metabolism of the compound. He made another note, genuine excitement in his voice. This is valuable data, Natalie. Your fear is actually contributing to the research. As he documented this unexpected development, I concentrated on moving my toes within my shoes, flexing fingers when his back was turned. Each tiny movement sent hope coursing through me. If the paralytic was wearing off faster than Andrew had calculated, we might have a chance if I could just keep him distracted long enough. I think we need to adjust the protocol, Andrew mused, more to himself than to us, presumably containing additional doses of his compound. I knew with absolute certainty that if he managed to dose me again, it would eliminate any chance of escape. As Andrew prepared another syringe, his back momentarily to us, I made eye contact with Lily. I tried to communicate without words. Help is coming. Stay strong. I love you. I made a solemn promise. I would get us out of this nightmare whatever it took. While Andrew busied himself preparing what would be a second dose of the paralytic agent, I focused intently on regaining control of my body. The initial numbness had given way to a pins and needles sensation spreading from my extremities inward, an encouraging sign that the compound was metabolizing. My nursing knowledge proved invaluable as I mentally assessed my condition. Andrew had mentioned the paralytic worked on neuromuscular junctions, similar to medical paralytics used in surgical settings. Such compounds typically wear off from the periphery inward, smaller muscle groups regaining function first. I discreetly tested this theory, managing to wiggle my fingers and toes when Andrew's attention was directed elsewhere. The movement was minimal but represented a critical development. I estimated I had perhaps 15 to 20 minutes before regaining sufficient motor control to act, if I could prevent him from administering another dose. The accelerated metabolism in Subject A presents an interesting variable, Andrew muttered, making another note in his journal. Could be weight-based, could be tolerance from previous microexposures, or possibly an adrenaline interaction. He approached me with clinical detachment, lifting my eyelids to check pupillary response, seemingly oblivious to the hatred I projected through my gaze. Still fully conscious and aware. Excellent. The cognitive preservation aspect is what makes this compound so valuable. From my position on the floor, I could see Lily a few feet away. Her breathing had steadied somewhat, but her eyes remained wide with terror. Unlike me, she hadn't yet shown signs of recovering motor function, perhaps due to her smaller body mass or Andrew's more careful calibration of her dose. Andrew returned to his medical bag, retrieving a small digital recorder. Day 217 of human trials, he dictated. Subjects A and B demonstrating expected neurological response patterns with the exception of accelerated metabolism in subject A. Will administer supplemental dose of compound in T7 to reestablish complete paralysis before proceeding with catalyst injection in subject B. He set down the recorder and picked up his phone, checking something before making another call. I need to update our timeline, he said to the person on the other end. The demonstration may need to be postponed by 24 hours. We're seeing some unexpected variables in metabolism rates. This confirmed my fears. Andrew was planning some sort of demonstration of his compound, presumably to the shadowy buyers he'd mentioned. We weren't just experimental subjects, we were to be exhibition pieces in his sales pitch. While he was distracted with the call, I concentrated on establishing eye contact with Lily. Trying to communicate silently, I managed to blink in a deliberate pattern, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. So, her eyes widened slightly in recognition, a spark of hope igniting in their depths. Yes, both subjects are secured. Andrew continued on the phone, pacing the kitchen area. No, there's no risk of exposure. The compound metabolizes completely within 12 hours, leaving no traceable elements in blood or tissue samples. This detail registered with particular clarity in my mind. If we escape, there would be no way to prove what Andrew had done to us. No toxicology report would show evidence of the unknown compound. We would need other forms of proof. As Andrew continued his conversation, I became aware of a critical advantage. He didn't realize I could hear everything he was saying. He believed Lily and I were simply passive, helpless subjects, unable to comprehend or remember the details of his operation. The buyers are still committed to the 8-figure offer, pending successful demonstration, he said, lowering his voice slightly. Yes, I understand the competition. Kim's team claims to have developed something similar, but their compound affects cognitive function. Mine preserves full consciousness. That's the selling point. When Andrew finally ended the call, he returned his attention to us with renewed purpose. Let's proceed with the next phase, he announced, retrieving the prepared syringe. As he approached, I concentrated on remaining completely still despite my gradually returning motor function. I needed to appear as helpless as he expected me to be, at least until I had enough control to act effectively. Andrew knelt beside me first, preparing to administer the second dose that would plunge me back into complete paralysis. This is a slightly modified formulation, he explained conversationally. Should prevent the accelerated metabolism we're seeing. Just as he was about to insert the needle into my arm, his phone rang again. He cursed under his breath, setting the syringe down on the coffee table to answer it. What is it? He snapped impatiently, walking a few steps away. No. I can't access the lab notes remotely. They're secure in the basement. I'll send them tomorrow. This momentary distraction was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. With immense concentration, I managed to move my arm just enough to knock the syringe from the coffee table. It fell to the carpet with a soft thud, rolling partially under the sofa, out of immediate sight. Andrew turned at the sound, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the floor. I'll call you back, he said tersely, ending the call. He approached cautiously, noticing the missing syringe. What did you do? He demanded, eyes darting between my apparently immobile form and the floor around us. I remained perfectly still, eyes fixed and glassy as if still completely paralyzed. Andrew knelt, searching for the fallen syringe, his back momentarily turned to me. In that crucial moment, I concentrated every ounce of my returning strength and launched myself toward him. Andrew recovered quickly, scrambling to his feet. Fascinating response, he said, his scientific detachment returning despite the situation. The adrenaline must be accelerating the metabolism of the compound exponentially. He moved to block my path, looming over me with clinical interest rather than anger. Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be, Natalie. You're in no condition to overpower me. He was right, my movements were jerky and uncoordinated, my muscles responding weakly to my brain's desperate commands. But what Andrew didn't account for was my knowledge of human physiology and vulnerable pressure points. Knowledge gained through years of emergency room nursing. As he reached down to restrain me, I managed to jab my fingers into the femoral pressure point on his inner thigh. It wasn't executed with my usual precision, but it was enough to cause him to gasp in pain and momentarily lose balance. "Damn it, Natalie," he hissed, stumbling backward. "Stop fighting this. You're part of something important. Something revolutionary." His words revealed the depth of his delusion. Even now, faced with his family's desperate struggle against him, Andrew truly believed he was pursuing a noble scientific goal. From across the room I heard a soft thud. Lily had managed to roll onto her side, creating enough noise to distract Andrew momentarily. Our eyes met briefly, and I understood she was trying to help the only way she could. Using the distraction, I dragged myself toward the kitchen counter where Andrew had left his phone. My fingers, still tingling with partial numbness, struggled to grasp the edge of the countertop. I pulled myself upright, legs trembling with the effort of supporting my weight. Andrew realized my intention and lunged toward me. "Don't be stupid," he warned. "Who would believe you? A nurse claiming her pharmaceutical executive husband developed an untraceable paralytic agent? You'd sound delusional." His words struck home. He had calculated this aspect too. Without evidence, it would be my word against his, and he had carefully cultivated his professional reputation while I had been focused on hospital work and raising our daughter. My hand finally closed around his phone, but before I could attempt to call for help, Andrew was upon me. He grabbed my wrist, squeezing until my weakened muscles released their grip on the device. "I didn't want to do this," he said, his voice chillingly reasonable, "but you're leaving me no choice." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a pre-filled syringe, a backup he had prepared. The sight of it renewed my desperation. If he managed to inject me again, all hope was lost. Drawing on reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed, I swung my other arm toward his face. My coordination was poor, but I managed to strike his temple, momentarily stunning him. The syringe clattered to the floor, and I kicked it away with my foot. In that desperate moment, survival instinct took over. My hand scrambled blindly along the countertop, fingers closing around the handle of a heavy cast iron skillet, left out from Andrew's dinner preparation. With the last of my strength, I swung it toward his head. The impact sent him staggering backward, blood streaming from a gash above his eyebrow. He looked at me with genuine shock, as if unable to comprehend that his experimental subject had fought back. "You don't understand what you're doing," he gasped, pressing his hand to the wound. "Years of research, millions in potential revenue. Our future." I couldn't respond verbally yet, but my expression must have communicated my complete rejection of his twisted justification. Taking advantage of his disorientation, I stumbled toward Lily, determined to get to my daughter. Andrew moved to intercept me, but his movements were clumsy now, affected by the blow to his head. As we faced each other across the living room, a loud crash came from the front door. I managed to reach the emergency phone I kept strapped to my ankle, a small backup device I carried since working night shifts in dangerous neighborhoods early in my nursing career. With trembling fingers, I pressed the emergency call button. The moment Andrew realized I had activated the emergency call, his expression transformed from calculated control to undisguised fury. The facade of the scientific researcher completely dissolved, revealing something feral and dangerous beneath. "What have you done?" he hissed, lunging toward me with unexpected speed. I scrambled backward, my movements still uncoordinated, but fueled by pure adrenaline. The emergency dispatcher's voice emanated faintly from the tiny device. 911, what's your emergency?" Andrew's hand clamped over my mouth before I could respond, his other hand attempting to wrestle the emergency phone from my grip. "Hang up," he commanded, his voice low and threatening. Hang up now, Natalie. I bit down hard on his hand, causing him to yelp and loosen his grip momentarily. Help! I managed to gasp into the phone, my voice still slurred from the lingering effects of the paralytic. 8724 Oakwood Drive. Poisoned. Help us. Andrew knocked the device from my hand, sending it skittering across the hardwood floor. They won't get here in time, he snarled, all pretense of rationality gone. Do you have any idea what you've done? Years of research, millions in potential funding, all jeopardized because you couldn't understand the bigger picture. From outside, Tyler Peterson's voice grew more insistent. Natalie? Andrew? I'm going to call the police if you don't open up. Andrew's head whipped toward the door, calculation returning to his eyes. He needed to contain the situation quickly. Grabbing my arm, he began dragging me toward the basement door. We're leaving, he stated flatly. I have contingency plans for this scenario. Backup lab offshore contacts. We'll take Lily, Ann. His words cut off abruptly as a heavy decorative bookend struck him in the shoulder. Lily, having regained enough motor control to sit up, had managed to throw the object with surprising accuracy despite her weakened state. Leave my mom alone, she cried, her voice thin but determined. Andrew stared at our daughter with an expression of betrayal that would have been comical if the situation weren't so dire. Even now, he seemed unable to comprehend that his family viewed him as a threat rather than a misunderstood genius. Lily, he said, his tone shifting to one of forced patience. You don't understand what's happening here. Your mother is confused, trying to stop important work that could benefit millions. You poisoned us, Lily responded, tears streaming down her face. I heard everything. You've been experimenting on us for months. Taking advantage of Andrew's distraction, I yanked my arm free and stumbled toward the large shelving unit separating our dining area from the living room. With all my remaining strength, I pulled it down, creating a temporary barrier between Andrew and Lily. The crash was deafening in the confined space. Books, decorative items, and framed photographs cascaded to the floor, several striking Andrew as he tried to dodge out of the way. Outside, Tyler's concerned calls had given way to the sound of someone attempting to force the front door. Andrew's eyes darted around the room, assessing escape routes. The logical part of my brain, the part trained for emergency situations, recognized he was transitioning to survival mode. He would either fight or flee, and either option could prove deadly for Lily and me. Andrew, I said, my voice growing stronger as the paralytic continued to wear off. It's over. The police are coming. The neighbors have heard everything. His expression hardened. It's not over until I say it's over, Natalie. Do you think I haven't prepared for contingencies? There's no evidence of the compound in your system. It metabolizes completely. It will be your word against mine. A respected pharmaceutical executive versus an overworked nurse with a history of prescription access. The calculated nature of his response chilled me to the bone. He had considered this scenario, had prepared a counter-narrative painting me as the unstable one. The journal, I countered, remembering the notebook he'd been documenting our symptoms in. Your lab in the basement. The recordings you made tonight. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Andrew's face. Before he could respond, the front door burst open. Tyler Peterson stood in the doorway, baseball bat in hand, eyes widening as he took in the scene of destruction. What the hell? He exclaimed, taking in my disheveled appearance, Lily's tear-streaked face, and Andrew's bleeding forehead. Andrew instantly shifted demeanor, his voice taking on a concerned, almost frightened quality. Tyler, thank God you're here. Natalie's having some kind of breakdown. She attacked me, started making wild accusations. I think she might have taken something from the hospital. The performance was masterful. Andrew transforming himself from aggressor to victim in seconds. I could see Tyler's expression wavering, uncertainty creeping in as he looked between us. He poisoned us, I stated firmly, my nurse's training helping me project calm authority despite my physical state. He's been experimenting on Lily and me with some kind of paralytic drug. Check his pocket for syringes. Look in the basement for his lab. Tyler hesitated, clearly uncomfortable finding himself in the middle of what appeared to be a domestic dispute. Help me calm her down before she hurts herself or Lily. It was the mention of Lily that proved to be Andrew's mistake. My daughter, still struggling against the lingering effects of the paralytic, managed to pull herself to a sitting position. He's lying, she said clearly, her young voice cutting through the tension. Dad put something in our food. I saw him. He took pictures of us when we couldn't move and talked about selling his formula to military people. He called us Subject A and Subject B. The specific details a frightened teenager wouldn't likely invent, caused Tyler to reassess the situation. His grip on the baseball bat tightened as he moved further into the house, positioning himself between Andrew and us. The police are on their way, Tyler said firmly. Let's all just stay calm until they get here. Andrew's expression hardened as he realized his narrative was crumbling. With surprising speed, he lunged toward the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the block on the counter. Stay back, he warned, brandishing the weapon. I'm leaving. By the time the police arrive, I'll be gone. Any of you try to stop me, and someone gets hurt. Tyler raised the baseball bat defensively, but Andrew's desperation made him unpredictable and dangerous. He began backing toward the door to the garage, knife extended before him. Andrew, I called, trying to keep my voice steady. Think about what you're doing. Running makes you look guilty. I'm already guilty in your eyes, he responded bitterly. But with no evidence in your system and my research secured off-site, it will be a brief inconvenience at most. I've planned for this, Natalie. I plan for everything. As he reached the garage door, the wail of approaching sirens became audible. Andrew's expression flickered. First fear, then resolve. This isn't over, he promised, backing through the door. Tyler moved to follow, but I called him back. Let him go. He's desperate and armed. The police will find him. As the garage door opened and Andrew's car engine roared to life, I crawled to Lily's side, pulling her into my arms. Her body trembled against mine, the paralytic's effects still lingering in her system. I've got you, I whispered, stroking her hair. You're safe now. We're both safe. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows as police cruisers pulled into our driveway, but too late to prevent Andrew's escape. His car screeched down the street, disappearing into the night. The next hours passed in a blur of police questions, paramedic examinations, and crime scene technicians combing through our home. The officers listened skeptically to my account until they discovered Andrew's basement laboratory, a sophisticated setup with chemical equipment, detailed journals, and even video recordings of previous experiments. Mrs. Davidson, Detective Sawyer said, emerging from the basement with a grim expression, I've seen some disturbing things in my career. The level of calculation and documentation is unlike anything I've encountered in a domestic case. He held up a leather-bound journal. Your husband has been documenting his experiments for over a year. Detailed notes on dosages, your reactions, recovery times. And there are video files showing previous incidents where you and your daughter were incapacitated. The confirmation of what I'd suspected, that Andrew had been experimenting on us for months, sent a wave of nausea through me. Memories of unexplained illnesses, periods of confusion, and Andrew's solicitous care afterward took on a horrifying new context. Will it be enough? I asked, thinking of Andrew's claim that the compound would leave no trace in our systems. To prove what he did, Detective Sawyer nodded firmly. More than enough. The journals alone constitute detailed confession. And we're coordinating with the FBI given the nature of the chemicals involved. He won't get far. As Lily and I were loaded into an ambulance for transport to the hospital, I glanced back at our home. Once a place of safety and comfort, now a crime scene ringed with police tape. The life I had built, the marriage I had believed in, had been an elaborate fiction concealing a nightmare reality. In the ambulance, Lily gripped my hand weakly, the paralytic still working its way out of her system. Mom, she whispered, her voice small but steady. Did you know? About Dad? No, sweetheart, I answered truthfully, tears filling my eyes. I had no idea what he was capable of. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you better. She squeezed my hand. You did protect me. You fought him. You saved us. As the ambulance sped toward the hospital, Those simple words from my daughter became a lifeline to cling to amidst the wreckage of our lives. We had survived. We had escaped. And somehow we would rebuild. The police captured Andrew 3 days later at a private airfield near the Canadian border, attempting to flee the country with multiple false identities and a portable drive containing all his research data. The man they arrested bore little resemblance to the husband and father we had known, wild-eyed, disheveled, ranting about intellectual property theft and the short-sightedness of ethical constraints on scientific progress. When confronted with the evidence found in our home, Andrew didn't deny his actions. Instead, he attempted to justify them. An unauthorized chemical experimentation on humans. The pharmaceutical company he had claimed to still work for revealed he had been terminated 18 months earlier for ethical violations, the start of his secret home experimentation. 3 months after that horrific night, Lily and I sat in Dr. Eleanor Winter's office for our weekly joint therapy session. The warm, sunlit space had become a sanctuary of sorts, a place where we could process the trauma without judgment or the morbid curiosity that often colored interactions in the outside world. "How have the nightmares been this week?" Dr. Winters asked, her gentle voice carrying no pressure, only support. "Better," Lily answered, tucking her legs beneath her on the comfortable couch. At 15 now, her birthday had passed during our recovery period. She sometimes seemed older than her years, the innocence of childhood abruptly curtailed by betrayal. "I still have them. But I don't wake up feeling like I can't move anymore." The paralysis dreams had been the worst in the early weeks, both of us reliving the helplessness of that night, waking in panic, convinced we couldn't move our limbs. For Lily, the psychological impact had been compounded by the fundamental betrayal of parental trust. Her father, her protector, had deliberately caused her harm, viewing her as a test subject rather than a beloved child. "And you, Natalie?" Dr. Winters turned her compassionate gaze to me. "I'm still working through the guilt," I admitted. The signs were there. All those unexplained illnesses, Andrew's secrecy, the changes in his behavior. As a nurse, I should have. Should have what? Dr. Winters interrupted gently. Should have assumed your husband was secretly poisoning you? Should have suspected the father of your child was using your family as unwilling test subjects? These aren't reasonable expectations. Natalie. Logically, I knew she was right. No one enters a marriage expecting to need the skills of a toxicologist or criminal profiler. Yet the professional part of me, the nurse trained to observe symptoms and identify causes, couldn't fully absolve myself. "The investigation turned up something interesting yesterday," I said, changing the subject slightly. "Detective Sawyer called to update me. They found evidence that Andrew had been methodically building his cover story for months, planting suggestions with colleagues that I was struggling with prescription medication, documenting fictional concerning behaviors in a separate journal he could produce if needed. Dear. Calculating researcher in another. It wasn't compartmentalization at the end," Lily observed with surprising insight. "Those parts merged. He talked about how he was doing it for our family's future, like poisoning us was some kind of weird gift. The criminal psychologists who had evaluated Andrew had come to similar conclusions. What had perhaps begun as separate mental categories had gradually merged into a cohesive delusion where his actions were not only justified but noble, pioneering scientific work that happened to re-experimenting on his family. Andrew now resided in a secure psychiatric facility, having been found competent to stand trial, but diagnosed with a complex constellation of personality disorders and delusional thinking. His trial was scheduled for spring, though his lawyers continued pushing for an insanity defense despite the clear evidence of methodical planning. "I've been thinking about going back to work," I said, surprising even myself with the admission. "Not full-time yet, but maybe a few shifts a month in a different department." The emergency room, once my professional home, now held too many triggers: the chemical smells, the acute trauma cases, the hypervigilance required. But the pediatric clinic had approached me about a part-time position, and something about helping children in a controlled, calm environment appealed to me. "That sounds like a positive step," Dr. Winters responded. "If you feel ready." Lily looked up at me, concern in her eyes. "Are you sure, Mom? It's okay if you're not ready yet." Her concern for me, This child who had endured so much brought tears to my eyes. Throughout our recovery, Lily had demonstrated resilience that humbled me. She had returned to school after 6 weeks, initially attending part-time with accommodations for therapy appointments and the occasional overwhelming day. Her friends had rallied around her, and the school counselor had been exceptional in providing support while respecting our privacy. I think I need to try, I answered honestly. Not moving forward feels like letting him continue to control our lives. This had become our mantra in recovery, recognizing when fear of triggering trauma was keeping us appropriately safe versus when it was unnecessarily limiting our healing. The balance was delicate and constantly shifting. We had moved from our former home, unable to feel safe in spaces so thoroughly violated by Andrew's betrayal. Our new apartment was smaller but filled with light. No basement, no dark corners, no hidden spaces. Security features that might once have seemed paranoid now provided essential peace of mind. Alarm systems, security cameras, specialized locks. The financial aspects had been challenging. Andrew's assets were frozen pending the criminal case. And while victim compensation funds had helped with immediate needs, rebuilding financially would be a long-term project. My sister Barbara had been our saving grace, opening her home to us initially and helping secure our new apartment when we were ready for independence. I've been thinking about what you said last session, Lily said, addressing Dr. Winters, about finding purpose in trauma. I'm considering starting a peer support group at school for kids dealing with family betrayal, not just like ours, but divorces, abandonment, any kind of parental breach of trust. Dr. Winters' expression warmed with approval. That sounds like a wonderful idea, Lily. How would you structure it? As Lily outlined her thoughtful plans, I marveled at her growth. In transforming her pain into compassion for others, she was reclaiming her agency in a way I still struggled to achieve. My own healing path had been more solitary. I had initially isolated myself, ashamed of having been so thoroughly deceived by the man I had chosen to build a life with. How could I have lived with Andrew for 15 years and not recognize the capacity for calculated harm that existed alongside the man who had held my hand through childbirth and nursed me through illness? The breakthrough had come through an unexpected channel. Jessica Moore, my colleague from the hospital, had persistently reached out despite my withdrawal. 2 months after the incident, she had appeared at our new apartment with dinner and unwavering support. "You know what helped me after my ex cleaned out our accounts and disappeared?" she had asked, serving pasta at our tiny kitchen table. "Realizing that trusting someone isn't a character flaw. It's actually one of your strengths, Natalie. Being able to trust after what you've been through. That's the real challenge now." Her words had penetrated the armor of self-recrimination I'd built. Gradually, I had allowed others back into our lives, selective, careful connections with people who had demonstrated their trustworthiness through actions rather than words. "I've made a decision about the victim impact statement," I said, returning to the present conversation. Andrew's legal team had been negotiating a plea deal that would spare us the trauma of testifying at a public trial. If accepted, Lily and I would have the opportunity to submit victim impact statements to the court. "I'm going to do it in person," I continued. "I need him to hear directly from me what his actions did to us, not just the physical harm, but the destruction of trust, security, and family." Dr. Winters nodded supportively. "That's a powerful choice, Natalie. How about you, Lily? Have you decided?" Lily's expression grew determined. "I'm doing it too. I wrote mine last night, actually." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. "Would it be okay if I read it here first? As practice?" At our nods of encouragement, she unfolded the paper and began reading in a clear, steady voice. "Dad, I used to think monsters weren't real. When I was little, you checked under my bed and in my closet to prove there was nothing to be afraid of. Now I understand that the most dangerous monsters don't hide under beds. They sit at the dinner table, they say, 'I love you.' They look like regular people. What you did to Mom and me wasn't love. It wasn't science. It was cruelty disguised as something important. I'm still figuring out how to trust people again, how to eat dinner without wondering what might be in it, how to sleep without dreaming about being trapped in my own body. But I'm doing it anyway, because letting your actions control my future gives you power you don't deserve anymore. I'm 15 now, And I'm rebuilding my life without you in it. That's not what I wanted, but it's what I need. And for the first time, I'm putting my needs first." Silence fell when she finished reading, her words hanging in the air with raw authenticity. Tears streamed down my face, a mixture of heartbreak for her pain and fierce pride in her strength. "That was incredibly powerful, Lily. Winters said softly after a moment. "Your father will hear not just what he did, but who you are becoming despite it." Lily refolded the paper carefully. "I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for me. For us." She reached for my hand. "We deserve to be heard." That evening, as we walked the 3 blocks from Dr. Winter's office to our apartment, I noticed something that had been gradually changing over the weeks. We were no longer scanning every face on the street with hypervigilance, no longer flinching at sudden movements in our peripheral vision. The constant state of alert that had characterized our early days of recovery had mellowed into a more sustainable awareness. "Mrs. Peterson from my math class asked if I'd babysit for her this weekend," Lily mentioned as we waited at a crosswalk. I said I'd think about it. The casual nature of the comment belied its significance. Accepting such normal teenage responsibilities represented a crucial step toward reclaiming ordinary life. "Do you want to do it?" I asked, careful to keep my tone neutral rather than overly encouraging or concerned. Lily considered the question thoughtfully. "Think so. Their apartment is just downstairs from ours, so it feels safe. And Emma is a cool kid. Then I think it sounds perfect." As we reached our building, the evening sun cast long shadows across the entrance. Such shadows might have triggered anxiety. Today, they were simply a natural part of the approaching dusk. Inside our apartment, I moved through the familiar routine of security checks, a practice Dr. Winters had helped me refine from compulsive reassurance seeking to mindful awareness. Doors locked, windows secured, alarm system active. Not from paralyzing fear, but from reasonable caution. While Lily started her homework, I prepared a simple dinner in our open-concept kitchen where all cabinets had clear glass doors. No hidden spaces, nothing concealed. Another adaptation that balanced psychological comfort with practical living. Over dinner, we discussed ordinary things: Lily's upcoming science project, a book we'd both been reading, plans for the weekend. The normality felt both precious and precarious, a delicate construction we were building day by day. Later, as Lily got ready for bed, I found myself drawn to the small balcony off our living room. The night air was cool against my skin as I gazed at the city lights stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere in those lights were other people facing their own private battles, their own recoveries, their own processes of rebuilding what had been broken. Lily joined me, wrapped in her favorite oversized sweater. "Penny for your thoughts?" I smiled at the phrase, one my mother had used throughout my childhood. "I was thinking about something Dr. Winters said today, about how healing isn't linear. Some days we move forward, some days we slide back, but the overall trajectory matters more than any individual day." Lily nodded, leaning against the railing beside me. "I had a good day today," she said simply. "Not perfect, but good. That's all we can ask for right now," I agreed. Good days that gradually outnumber the difficult ones. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker and glow. After a while, Lily spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. "Mom, I'm proud of us. For surviving. For fighting back. For not letting him win." In that moment, looking at my daughter's profile against the night sky, I felt something that had been absent for too long: hope, not just as a concept but as a tangible presence. We had survived the unimaginable. We had fought our way back to each other and to ourselves. The road ahead would not be easy, but we would walk it together, one step at a time, one day at a time. "I'm proud of us too," I said, putting my arm around her shoulders. "And I'm certain of one thing." "What's that?" "Whatever comes next, we can handle it." As we turned to go inside, I took one last look at the city stretched before us, a landscape of possibilities, challenges and new beginnings. The future, once shattered by betrayal, now lay open before us, waiting to be reclaimed and reshaped by our own hands. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after a profound betrayal, or if you've found yourself questioning relationships you thought were safe, know that you're not alone. Has someone ever broken your trust in a way that made you question everything? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that survival and healing are possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, trust your instincts. They're often speaking a truth your conscious mind isn't ready to hear.